I like that the liberals, instead of licking their wounds and doing an autopsy, have decided, you know what? There's a far greater enemy out here. Trans people, undocumented immigrants, and the left. Okay, how are you any different than the Republican right then? I hate it.
Kamala Harris and Tim Walz urging their supporters to keep up the fight on a call with grassroots organizers yesterday.
I know this is an uncertain time.
Yeah. Lee Zeldin is saying it's like pro-Palestine themed messages. We'll see more.
I'm clear-eyed about that.
We'll learn more about it
soon. And it feels heavy. And I just have to remind you, don't you ever let anybody take your power from you. You have the same power that you did before November 5th.
3 weeks after losing the election, Harris's team is speaking out for the first time. In a wide-ranging interview with Pod Save America's Dan Pfeiffer, former senior advisor to Barack Obama, 4 senior members of the Harris campaign discussed what they think went wrong. One major hurdle, they say, they only had 107 days, and they say that impacted decisions like the number of interviews she could do. Trump, on the other hand, of course, made it part of his campaign to appear across several popular podcasts.
One of the things I like about doing a show like this, can you imagine Kamala doing this show?
I could imagine her doing this show.
She'd be laying on the floor.
She was supposed to do it, and she might still do it, and I hope she does.
She's not going to do it.
I will talk to her like a human being. I would try to have a conversation with her.
If she did this kind of an interview with you, I hope she does, because it would be a mess. She'd be laying on the floor comatose. You'd be saying, call in the medics.
Harris's team addressed whether she should have gone on Joe Rogan's podcast and tried to explain why it never happened.
Yeah, there's a lot of intrigue around this, a lot of theory.
I'm sorry. While I do think it would have improved their chances, I don't think that it would have changed the outcome. Having said that, however, this level of emphasis on a singular podcast is yet another resounding example that we have devolved as a society. Okay, we have devolved spectacularly.
It's pretty simple. We wanted to do it. We had discussions with Joe Rogan's team. They were great. They wanted us to come on. We wanted to come on. We tried to get a date to make it work, and ultimately we just weren't able to find a date. But it didn't ultimately impact the outcome one way or the other.
They say they just couldn't find a date there, and that they don't think it would have impacted the outcome one way or the other. James Carville weighed in on this question in recent days. Let's watch what he had to say.
The vice president was thinking about going on Joe Rogan's show, and a lot of the younger progressive staffers pitched a hissy fit. If I were running a 2028 campaign...
Dude, this argument is so dumb. Oh, really? Oh, so you listened to your younger staffers about Joe Rogan, but you didn't listen to your younger staffers about Israel-Palestine? I wonder what was more consequential for the election. I don't believe this even for a second, okay? This lizard. That's a From Software common enemy? Yes, that is James Carville, a From Software common enemy. You are right. Yeah, get out of here, dude. Oh, they listened to their staffers. They're so scared of their staffers. No, they're not. You're just lying. I hate this nonsense.
Campaign, and I had some little snot-nosed 23-year-old saying, I'm going to resign if you don't do this. Not only would I fire that on the spot, I would find out who hired them and fire that person on the spot. I'm really not interested in your uninformed, stupid opinion as to whether you go on Joe Rogan or not.
Okay, so Jaime, you have the unfortunate...
This is the classic Reddit conundrum of just like operating on a false premise and then, fantasizing about what you would do under that false premise. Like, just, that's it. Like, it's not real. This is not a real thing, okay? The idea that like the Kamala Harris campaign was too scared of a bunch of the low-level staffers who were like, no, don't do it. Joe Rogan is not woke. It's just trying to reframe a very similar narrative that it's the young wokes that are ruining the party. The Kamala Harris staffers were only focused on Joe Rogan. They had to listen to their youthful staffers on whether or not they should go on the Joe Rogan podcast, but had no problems not listening to them on any number of different things, like, changing trajectory on the ongoing genocide in Gaza. Feelings on Coca-Cola now being BDS. I've already covered this in the morning. I'm heartbroken, but hey, I will, if this is a successful pressure campaign against Coca-Cola, then I'm all for it, I will abide by it. I have talked about my opinions on boycotting and consumer-based activism, and the Palestinian National Council boycott, divestment, and sanctions is like a perfect example of a hyper-targeted, very specific, very deliberate pressure campaign. It's exactly what is good.
Position as being for the person who has to explain and answer for all of this for us today. What did go wrong?
Yeah. Look, I hate these postmortems, and Mike and I have been talking about this, and this is going to go on for weeks and weeks and weeks. There were myriad of things that happened over the course of the last 4 years and even 8 years that led to what happened on November 5th. Look, two things that stand out to me. I think my friends on the Kamala campaign are correct. 107 days is not enough time to run for president. That's just a fact. And on the other side, Donald Trump has now run 3 times. This is the 3rd Democratic nominee that he's run against. And so Donald Trump has run for president 3 times. And so he's been able to seed his messaging a lot more strongly than any of our candidates have been, because we've switched over each of the 3 times. And so I do believe that Vice President Harris ran a tremendous campaign, and I think she was as good of a candidate as she could have been. Now, granted, let's pull back to the layers a little bit. Should she have done Joe Rogan? Yes, she should have. Would it have changed the election? Probably not. And so I think, and look, I'm going to steal something that Mike and I were talking about in Mario during the green room. I think here's the overarching thing. You've got to meet voters where they are. You can't try to lead them to where you want them to go. And I think time and time again, Democrats, and particularly this past campaign, we were trying to lead a high-minded campaign and talk about issues that we thought were important to people, but come to find out, that's not what people wanted to talk about. People wanted to talk about immigration. They wanted to feel safe. They wanted to talk about inflation. And look, all these numbers that, these indicators that we're talking about today seem to be doing better right now. And I think if we had a couple more days or weeks, I do believe Kamala Harris and Joe Biden could have got that message out a little bit more saliently. And then, of course, Governor Walz did a great job, too.
And just to Haima's point, I mean, there's a couple of things, right? We talked about immigration earlier.
Dude, everyone is so bad at their jobs. It's crazy.
In this segment, we saw Governor Abbott. He was arguably the unsung hero of this political campaign, right, by bringing immigration to the fore. When you look at Donald Trump's, what he's arguing is a mandate for a second term based off of the margin of victory that he had over Vice President Harris. I mean, you look at some of those blue states, that's what's emboldening him. And that's also the warning sign, I think, for the Democrats, right, because it is immigration, it is inflation. She was quite defensive, as was Biden. When Haima mentioned some of the indicators, right, President Biden, before Harris assumed the mantle, would just come out and talk about all of these statistics from the Economic Council, excuse me, et cetera. And Americans aren't feeling that when they go to the grocery store and pay for eggs and bread and all of those other things. And Vice President Harris, I think the campaign fell a little bit short of understanding and being able to articulate Americans' pain.
Yeah, so let's dig in a little bit more on Stephen in particular there. Of course, we've spent a lot of time on, and it was an ad that was framed around trans issues, right? That the Trump campaign put a lot of money behind, and it was, Kamala Harris is for they, them, Trump is for you. Here was how...
They love that ad. I swear to Christ, the media, especially the liberal side of media, likes that ad more than anyone else. They love pointing to that ad to be like, it was brilliant, it was amazing. And I think it's because it just goes back to the same thing that I always talk about, which is that everyone is like a little transphobic to a lot transphobic. And so for that reason, especially when paired with the fearful nature of liberals, they like, it creates a sense of panic where they're like, no, the ad was so good. It was so good. They got us. We're so pro-trans. They got us. No, when you're not someone who is well-defined, then people can make a mockery out of you. When you have no genuinely held convictions and no universal programs that you're advocating for, people can just like so easily turn around and be like, yeah, you only care about giving trans prisoners bottom surgery. It's so stupid.
Quentin Folks, who was on the campaign, as well as David Plouffe, explained that in this postmortem. Let's watch.
Obviously, it was a very effective ad at the end. I ultimately don't believe that it was about the issue of trans. I think that it made her seem out of touch. And it was sort of a pseudo-economic ad underneath it.
At the end of the day, we were spending a lot of time with voters in these battleground states, both quantitatively and quantitatively. And this trans ad was not driving vote.
So he says the ad's not driving votes, but when you listen to what Quentin said there, I'm sure that they were testing the trans issue in a straightforward way, but if the ad's about way more than that, it doesn't necessarily line up.
Right, and it's amazing how after an election, it's like one or two things that, oh, we lost because of that. But go back to the Virginia governor's race in 2021. The issues in that race were inflation, trans kids in sports, and immigration. Even
Dude, that's crazy. My man is pointing to a special elections in a governor's race. Like, it is perhaps the worst example. You might as well be talking about an election in Zimbabwe to try and derive any sort of data that you can extrapolate from this conversation as like prescient is so childish. Brother, what happened after 2021? There was a term election. You went back to 2021 to a gubernatorial special race? Are you stupid? How are you a paid commentator? Red states have blue governors. Blue states have red governors. People have a much closer relationship with their governors. Okay? It bears no basis on a broader political conversation in general. Mark Robinson, for many different reasons, lost the the gubernatorial race on the same ticket where Kamala Harris lost. Okay? Andy Bashar is a Democrat and one of the most popular governors in the nation state. And Andy Bashar is a pro-trans Democrat in Kentucky. Yeah, Vermont reelected a Republican governor by a landslide. This is just how it is. You can't extrapolate. You can't use governor races as a serious metric for anything, especially a special election that is just a gubernatorial race. Oh my God, you're so stupid.
even in Virginia was an issue. That completely prefigured this election. And I think because the Democrats did better than everyone thought they would in the midterm elections, that people kind of forgot that. But I think
and that's why we ended up with the 170-day campaign, by the way.
Right, but I think the election was probably lost 3 years ago when the White House was saying inflation was transitory when everyone knew it wasn't, and they were saying there wasn't a border crisis when there was.
Do you agree?
I mean, oh yeah, I agree. I also think there were parental issues in that gubernatorial race in 2021. I mean, it was a. Let me put it to you that there's so many places I could go with this, but let me just put it in this context. When you had the they them was the important line in that ad. It had less to do with the transgender issue and more with the they them, the wokeness. When you juxtapose Vice President Harris and Beyonce against Donald Trump at either McDonald's or wearing an orange vest in a garbage truck.
Donald Trump's a billionaire, brother. What are you talking about? Like, I know for a fact that he would be ripping into Kamala Harris if she also did the same dumbass thing that Donald Trump did by, you know, cosplaying as a regular layman. Everyone would rip into her. It's so dumb.
That was the difference in the election. It had everything to do with the economy, but it also had to do with who is speaking directly to the voters. And you had Donald Trump doing what Democrats have done for decades, speaking directly to working class voters. And the Harris campaign either ignored them, didn't think they needed them. I don't know what their idea was there, but they made a vibe election bet. He made a base election, unvoted, low propensity voter bet, and he won.
For sure. All right. Stephen Collinson, Mario Parker, Jaime Moore, Mike Dubke, thank you all very much for joining me this morning. I appreciate it. Happy Thanksgiving.
So when you want to give like an interview after, give a post-mortem, you think you would go to a traditional media outlet? That way they can ask some,
Kamala campaign blames bad question for interview snafus. Dude, it's crazy how hard the Republicans are just cooking. They are absolutely dominating the Democratic media, the Democratic Party apparatus. They've just been nonstop. It's been an endless faucet of ownage. God damn, it must feel good to be a Republican right around now. You're like, we want everything, brother. Where was I? Oh, Adam McKay, this timidity, lack of situational understanding, and deference to power is the reason why people like this are hired in advance in the DNC ecosystem, legacy news, corporations, etc. select schools, communities, and mentors cultivate this nibble around the edges approach. And in the face of an active genocide, climate collapse, and widespread economic predation/corruption is absolutely killing us. Also, I just found out that Adam McKay actually follows me on Twitter. Watch this space. Got to get him on the broadcast, I think. It's so funny that I use his movies so much. He saw your Schmeat yesterday. Have some shame. Maybe that's why he started following me. He was like, man, he's like, look, ultimately, I don't really care about a man's Schmeat, but like he has a respectable one, which is worthy of a follow. Like he's like, it doesn't tickle my fancy in like a gay way, but I respect it in like a manly way.
Tough questions. Instead, the Obama crew that ran Kamala Harris' campaign went to the Obama Bros, which were the speechwriters, the comms team.
Pod Save America.
Pod Save America, and this is what they had to say.
Dude, Pod Save America's they're eating it from every side, by the way. That's so funny. The left hates them because they're like, oh, you guys are establishment shills. And the right obviously hate them also because they're like, you're Democratic Party establishment shills. And the Democratic Party establishment hates them because they're like, oh, you're not loyal enough, even though they have been. And they haven't really gotten enough in return for that loyalty either. That's what's hilarious about it, is that like, it's not like the you mean them, you're a Podjon? Okay, that's true. I am a Podjon. I'm a Podjon now. Okay, so put some respect on it. Yes. The CNN video's out
Hasan
now.
Piker.
The CNN video's out and Kaya's on it. That's right. Kaya is on the main stage. Oh, by the way, you know who was really mad at them? The Kennedy guy, Jack Schlossberg, who he's like somewhat unwell, I think. And he's always like popping off on TikTok. He sometimes shows up on my For You page too. But he said podcast was a comedy, not a tragedy. Absolutely no grace or humility, no accountability, no clue. Truly insulting. But there's a happy ending. Never have to listen to the person below again, and neither do any of you. Crank T. Nelson says, Jack, I'm afraid you are very mistaken about the nature of the Democratic Party if you think we won't hear from election losers again. Yeah. The IRS just said it wants $20 billion more money. Do you think this budget should be increased, same, decreased, deleted? Flat tax for all, no loopholes. I suspect when they say flat tax, they don't mean like, you know, a flat percentage. They mean like a finite amount. They mean like, you know, everybody pays like $1,000. I don't know. We are so cooked. America as a nation is so cooked. I will always keep repeating this. Oh, Kamala Harris was refused by Sean Evans, by the way, which I thought was pretty funny.
We would do an interview, and the questions were small and processy and about like
dumb.
They were not informing a voter who was trying to listen to learn more or to understand. That does a disservice to voters, and being up against a narrative that we weren't doing anything or we were afraid to have interviews is complete, and also like took hold a little bit, and we just gave us another thing we had to fight back for that Trump never had to worry about.
Well, I mean, look, everyone could look back. This is the time to be honest. This is the only time.
You have nothing to lose.
That mode of midterms. But when she says she blames the people for asking small questions, that is the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life. I blame the friendly questions that we got from friendly journalists.
Layups.
Where 77% of all the your coverage was positive. Where something like 85% of all Trump's was negative. And you blame the questions.
Dude, you want to know something crazy? Fox News is 100% right. I hate that I have to give it to Brian myself, of all people. Okay? It makes me want to say, I'm Brian Kilmeade. But they are 100% right with this analysis. Like, he's on the money. He's like, what are you, now complaining that they were too nice to you? What? The media very rarely actually ask like adversarial questions. And I think it's partially because, you know, they paid the piper. They were so unimaginably pro-corporate donors and pro-Israel that, like, I think that's part of the process. The media was like, all right, you're playing ball. We got you. The problem is mainstream news, especially on the left, no longer has the same motion that it once did. The online content sphere is far too diversified and far too vast and far too successful. The audiences that are watching mainstream television are so old, they're dying. And what is she gonna do? Come on my show? I would have asked some big questions. No small ones.
If you get a question of what is it going to take to win, that's all I need.
Yeah.
Because if I know what it takes to win and what my vision is, thank you for the easy question. I will take advantage of it. You know it with your book interviews. If someone says, tell me about Under His Wings, you can't be like, what a bad question.
Right.
I'm going to tell any books. You say, okay, I'm going to tell you about the content of it. It is an opportunity.
Oh my God. He's actually cooking. What the is going on? I mean, he's literally right. He's like, you're complaining about the stupid questions? No. Wait, what? Peter Griffin bears it all while eating spicy wings. Popular YouTube show host Hot Ones turned down Kamala Harris pre-election interview request. I wonder if any of them, the team guesting on PSA, made the call to have you removed from the DNC. No, Kamala's campaign was actually in favor of me being at the DNC to begin with. It was the actual DNC that did not like it. It was Jamie Harrison's side that was very agitated about it. And as far as I understand from the people that I talked to and the people that I heard from, it was the straw that broke the camel's back was my anger towards not having a Palestinian speaker. Would you go on Hot Ones? Yes, dude, of course. Sean Evans is my mortal enemy, okay? But I would go on Hot Ones for sure. Why wouldn't I? I'd love to go on Hot Ones. Yeah, I said it was some real Israel behavior by the DNC. Sean is your fragile op? Yeah, he is. Although I'm a bald chaser, Sean Evans, who doesn't know I exist, is my op. And old heads of the show know why, okay? There is a good reason for it. He beat me many years ago. He bested me in the battle in an award show that doesn't even exist anymore, and I will never live it down.
Opportunity to show yourself. And what she missed is an opportunity to hop on the podcast. They keep on debating the Joe Rogan podcast. It's the format. The format is, I'm not really going to ask you about what you did or Joe Biden. I'm going to ask you about you. And are you comfortable talking besides recipes? What else makes you up?
Yeah.
Why did you get married late? What went into those decisions? Yeah. What was it like growing up in San Francisco, with a single parent? So that's when you have an opportunity over the course of 3 hours to show your personality. Trump did it, but the format worked for Trump. Andrew Schultz and these guys, they were funny.
That's when he's his best.
He's self-effacing. Yeah. So if you are self-effacing and you have a degree of humility, that's why you love the format.
No. Donald Trump is not self-effacing at all. He is funny. He's telegenic. But no, he's not self-effacing. What are you talking about, dude? I feel like these guys genuinely, like saying Trump experiences or exhibits humility is so mind-boggling to me. Like, we are living on an alternative plane of existence, dude. You are not living on planet Earth. I'm sorry. You are out of your mind. What are you talking about? He's never demonstrated humility at all. The only difference is Trump is honestly dishonest, okay? He comes across as earnest in his dishonesty. He's like, yeah, I'm a scumbag, but I'm your scumbag. That's it. Whereas Democrats, even if they're being honest, come across as dishonest. They're so scared. They're meek. They're insincere. They come across as technocratic elitists.
And then you hop in with 60 Minutes. You answer some questions circuitously, and they make you seem smart.
Yeah.
They edit your answers, and you're still complaining, and then you were scared to do an interview. Don't lie about it. You didn't put her in front of the cameras till after the DNC.
Yeah.
So true. Emily, they blamed Trump, actually, when it came to the... They said, look, they were actually trying to do the interview that same day that Trump did it in Houston, but they just really couldn't make it work. It's to Brian's point, though, they really didn't want to do the interview. There were people within the campaign staff that didn't think that she was shying, A. And number two, as James Carville made it very clear, the young people on the campaign, the crazy, blue hair, purple hair.
Don't do Rogan.
They said, don't do Rogan.
That's right. And the thing is,
the handshake coming from the liberal mainstream media outlets and the stupid ass Fox News and the rest of the right-wing circuit is so frustrating. They're all in unison saying the same shit. Every single one of your parents, you're going to see them. If you haven't seen them already, you're going to see them in the upcoming days. They are going to repeat the exact same dumbass talking points to you because both the Republican side and the liberal side, if you're over the age of 45, if you're over the age of 50, you're watching television, and Television Man is saying the exact same I like that the liberals, instead of licking their wounds and doing an autopsy, have decided, you know what? There's a far greater enemy out here. Trans people, undocumented immigrants, and the left. Okay, how are you any different than the Republican right then? I hate it.
For someone that effectively attempted to have us believe in her as a leader, and by the way, she was the current vice president this entire time, and yet remains unchallenged. To your point about all of these interviews, everything she said was never challenged. She never had a follow-up question. Contrast that with President Trump during a debate where everyone said it was 3-on-1. Everything he said was challenged, twisted, manipulated, and pushed back. She had every softball, every option, every opportunity, every time. And yet she wants us to believe that she's the victim, that the scheduling didn't work out, that she can't make something work. And yet you want me to put my faith in you as a commander-in-chief? You think I can trust you with the nuclear codes, with diplomacy, with representing me on the national and global stage, and you can't even articulate the answer to a softball question as to economic policy or why you flip-flop?
She should have never did the rally in Houston. There was no shot in winning Texas. There was absolutely no shot. It would have been more beneficial to the campaign to do the interview than do that rally in Texas. They had this, just like the poll that was released days before Iowa. There was no shot in winning Iowa. Everyone knew it. It was an outlier. Instead, they wanted the voters. They said the same thing about Florida. There's a shot. We're seeing some movement. Ron DeSantis has dominated in Florida for the last election cycle, okay? Midterms and his governor's race. So there was no data to suggest.
What about who the Dems put in charge versus who the Republicans put in charge? Like, Trump picks are insane. No Dem presidents ever had picks like that. Yeah, no. Democrats put more competent pieces of shit in positions of power, whereas the Republicans put direct monsters in positions of power. But I don't know why you're even bringing that up. I mean, there's no argument here. Yes, Democrats will bring about a more moderate, a managed fascism, as opposed to the Republican Party that wants this volatility of full tilt fascism. Democrats are there to always there to either normalize Republican positions or restructure the government, maybe pick up some of the pieces that the Republicans destroyed, but never fully actually clawing back all of the gross power transfers that the Republicans engaged in, or the exchange of resources or deregulation that the Republican Party put in place. But here's the thing. You don't want the Republicans to put assholes into positions of power, and I certainly don't want that. Then you have to run a good race. You have to be a competent, a competent politician, even before the race. This is what is frustrating about this process. Okay, I don't want Donald Trump to win. I didn't want Donald Trump to win. I made that very clear. But the reality is, I was frustrated with the Democrats because they were going to lose to Donald Trump. They were making a very dangerous gamble. And it turns out I was right. Even though towards the end, I was like, maybe there's an opportunity here, slight opportunity, even though I favor Trump winning the popular vote. You're a loser, baby. Trump 2024, baby. You're a loser, man. Yeah, I mean, it already happened. Trump is already going to be president. And I'm willing to bet that your life is not going to change in a meaningful fashion, in a positive direction. It's going to get worse. And we'll check back with you in a couple of years. I mean, it's 2019 that you've been following me since. And you have a good head on your shoulders. Keep it up. I really want to hear what you have to say about building the wall. But she really doesn't have to pay for the place they're building or the electricity or tools you said back in 2019. My opinion on building the wall has not changed, just so you understand. And I suspect that your life did not improve meaningfully under the first Trump administration, despite the fact that you supported him. Yeah, my man went dead silent for the 4 years of Biden, the Biden dub, only to come back. A glorious return. For a lot of people, they just think like, oh yeah, we're going to dominate trans people. We're going to dominate gay people. We're going to dominate the undocumented migrants, thinking that that is going to make rent better. You know, it's not. Is your landlord trans? Is your landlord undocumented? Okay, is your landlord ruining the housing market? Or not your landlord. Your landlord is doing that. Is an undocumented migrant ruining the housing market? I didn't realize there were BlackRock, you know? It's all comprised of undocumented migrants. Undocumented migrants are at Sweet Baby Inc., ruining video games. My dad is currently watching you for the first time on CNN. He doesn't know that I watch you. Oh, shit. Tell me what he thinks. Tell me what he thinks about the piece.
Yes, that they had a path there, but they were telling people this to try to excite. Just like at the convention, Brian, they said there was so much joy. There was no joy. No one liked her. And we saw it at every swing state when she lost every single swing state.
Right. So I think there's a lot there. I just think that finally, the question that destroyed her campaign, and everyone agrees, was, how are you different than Joe Biden?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So you
By Sonny Hostin.
So in retrospect, the questions were too simple. You can't get simpler than that. If you can't hit an underhand pitch,
It's a layup.
why should I give you a fastball?
Exactly. Gosh,
This is true.
nailing it.
Wow.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch